Hey everyone, if you're looking for a deck that plays a bit differently than other decks, then look no further. We'll discuss the defining cards and the synergies of the deck, how to approach the Mulligan, your game plan and passing strategy, a quick matchup analysis, and as always, we'll take a look at some example matches. Tell me which decks to cover next down in the comments below, and subscribe to me if you'd like to see more Homecoming deck guides. And now, let's go. This deck is all about one card, the Bran Bearmasters. He'll buff a beast by 1 point, but for every beast in the graveyard, he'll buff the beast by 1 additional point. Therefore, he'll be easily worth 9 to 13 points in round 2 or 3, depending on how much beasts you're able to get to your graveyard. To make his ability as powerful as it can be, we basically try to stuff every beast we can find into the deck. Raging Bears, Elder Bears, Savage Bears, Wolfpack, Prising Cow, Ulvedin, Roach and Naguara are typically units we like in our graveyards to add to our Bearmasters power. Elder Bears are just 5 points and a pretty lousy card on its own. Raging Bear is a bit better because it can either deal 1 damage to itself or to the neighbor left to it. This enables us to stagger it, but more importantly, we're able to kill off units. Typical targets would be Savage Bears, so we have more of them in our graveyard for their ability, but more importantly, we can kill off the Bearmaster itself, so we can replay it immediately with a Freya's Blessing or even a Necromancy. Wolfpack is a simple 2-point body with the ability to deal 2 damage. Savage Bear is a bit more interesting because it has an order ability that enables us to deal 2 damage to an enemy. Thanks to Seal, we can use it and it gets 1 extra charge for each Savage Bear in the graveyard. By using Operator onto a Savage Bear, we can create another beast for the Bearmaster, but we also create another Savage Bear for Savage Bear's ability, making a Savage Bear worth 8 points, while giving us the ability to deny some units of the enemy. Pretty decent for a 5 provision card. Also, if we play Operator onto Savage Bear, we are able to execute the order ability immediately on the spawned Savage Bear on their side, making Operator a 7-point play plus setup for our other cards. Then we have Prize Winning Cow, which is really just in the deck to have another beast in there. If you need a discard target, well, there you go. And sometimes you can play her to force the enemy into a suboptimal play, because they need to deal with the cow immediately, or it will grow into a 10-point monster, which is also a beast, so good for us. Ulvedin can generate a good amount of value against decks like Woodland Giants, because it deals half of the enemy's power in damage, and typically that exceeds its provision cost of 7, so it's not a bad card to have. Roach helps us to thin the deck, while providing another beast tag in our graveyard, and Naguara can lock an enemy unit, which is quite useful in the current meta. Thanks to her beast tag, we either use her to fuel our Beastmasters, but she's also a nice body for receiving the buffs in round 3. Then we have 2 more beasts, but they're not that well equipped to fuel our Bearmaster. Morkrag helps us to thin, while providing some tempo, because if he's discarded or put to the graveyard in another way, he'll jump back onto the board. Since he becomes doomed afterwards, he won't end up in the graveyard a second time though. Kambi is an exciting card because it lets you discard the rightmost card in your hand and then forces the enemy to do the same. In doing this, you often prevent a big finisher from happening, and if the enemy has no cards left, then it will pass automatically. No lead abilities, no order abilities, just a plain pass. This can save you games. Then we have some thinning cards in the deck like Burner Bran and Darren. Burner draws you 2 cards, then lets you discard 2 of them, and Darren enables you to choose 3 cards off your deck so you can put them into the graveyard. To those cards, in addition to our lead ability, we should have no problem to thin down to 0 cards left, which is where Decoy comes into play. Decoy puts a card from the battlefield into your deck, and then plays the top card off the deck. If you thin down to 0, you are guaranteed to replay the card you target with Decoy, which will get you quite some value if you play it onto a Bearmaster. Freya's Blessing and Necromancy are our resurrection spells, to either replay Bearmaster or to utilize the power of a Savage Bear. Sometimes we also need them to get another beast back onto the battlefield, so Bearmaster is a target that doesn't die immediately. And last but not least, we have Bran Skirmishers, which when discarded are not moving to the graveyard, but onto the battlefield. Let's talk about the Mulligan. The most important cards to have are Darren and Burner, so you can quickly get stuff on the graveyard while working towards having 0 cards left in the deck. Because of Bran and them, it is also good to have discard targets on your hand like skirmishers or beasts. Operator with a Savage Bear is also a good thing to have in your starting hand. If you have a really crappy hand with 2 Bearmasters in round 1, no Darren, no Burner, a lot of resurrections, then use your Mulligans early to fix that hand, so you are able to contest round 1. If you have Burner, Darren and Co, then you can save the Mulligans for later, so you draw the red cards in round 2, and then for example, resurrections in round 3. Our gameplay plan would look like this. In round 1, we drop as many beasts as possible to set up Bearmasters for round 2 and 3. By playing Darren and selecting cards like 1 Savage Bear and Morkvak, we'll create quite some tempo, and Roach will jump out of the deck as well. Try to win round 1 and don't be scared to use cards like Ulvedin or Agara, because your win conditions for the other rounds are Bearmasters, so utilize the other cards to get ahead here. Wait with your discard cards and your leader until the enemy has played a unit, because every discard will also deal 1 damage to a random enemy. If you have Operator on hand, then try to play it in this round for the extra beast, preferably a Savage Bear. Round 2 is different, depending on the deck you're playing against. Typically, you like to bleed your enemy by playing 2 powerful Bearmasters in this round, so you force the enemy to either drop some powerful gold cards or to go 1 card down because the tempo of your Bearmasters is quite high. This is especially good against decks that rely on artifacts a lot and decks that need some setup, like most engine decks. However, be wary of a round 2 play if you face decks like Giant Woodland and other decks that have high tempo potential. In round 3, you can utilize your Bearmasters again through your free resurrection cards and by using Decoy when you fin your deck to 0. Make sure you have the option to get at least 2 beasts onto the battlefield, or cards like Ike or Geralt of Rivia will be able to snatch all your points at once. Try to decide early in the round if you want to use Cambi or discard him for another beast point. If you think the enemy has good finisher like Shiro or Geralt, which they will keep as the last card, then always keep Cambi. But if you can get more value out of another Bearmaster instead of playing Cambi and discard a card, then do that instead. Matchup wise, I'll try a different format this time, because many decks can be grouped together in specific threats against this deck. Let's start with decks with damage like Ifni Elves or Bloodlust Krach. The most dangerous part is if they manage to kill off your beasts before you're able to buff them with Bearmasters, so instead of setting up all your beasts first, go and buff them so they don't die that easily. Often they have a problem with splitting the rounds because they need to coordinate the damage abilities to trigger Regis or Bloodlust, so bleeding them is an effective way to force them to do the setup twice. Decks with locks, like most Nilfgaard decks. Locks are pretty useless against our deck because we don't run order abilities, except one. Just be sure to use your Savage Bear's ability immediately or you may lose out on that. Decks with high unit removals like Assault Foltest, Witches or Ifni Elves. Try to bleed them in round 2 to force the removals out so you're on the safe side in round 3. Also, Cambi can be a lifesaver here, because often they wait with the big removals until pretty late in the round because they hope to get the most value out of it. Then we have engine decks like Boost Foltest, Charge Demavent or Death Wish. We have one lock through Agora, so identify the most dangerous engine like Visigothra in the Foltest lists or Gales in Death Wish. Those are the cards you want to use Agora on, so don't waste it on the first engine that comes to your mind. Also try to utilize the damage from Wolfpack and your Savage Bear to remove the weaker engines or to stop them in their tracks. 6 damage from a Savage Bear can get rid of Magen Division, and even a Wolfpack may stop a Markham Defender in its tracks. And now, let's look at some gameplay matches to see the deck in action. Okay, Francesca, interesting. So much interesting matchups today. Let's see what she's doing. Oh, come on, Roach again. Go away, Roach. This is decent, this is perfect. Yeah, we can discard Morkvak for Burner if we want to. We have the cow. But we have like bears as well. This we can't play. We'll see what we draw here. It's fine. I guess we start with Darren because it's not discard. So this gets Roach out. No! We discard one Savage Bear and want to have that on the graveyard. In the graveyard. I don't like Elder Bears. And I mean, I guess like Wolfspeck is also not much value. Let's get rid of the Wolfspeck as well. Could have thought of getting rid of 2 Wolfspecks.
Not
Let's see.
afraid. You should be.
Okay, another special card, so it's just like 4, which is fine. I think we just go for more tempo here. Just want to fin and fin and fin. I'm always thinking like, what happens if I play the short? I mean, we've seen he has like damaging abilities and Square Tails generally damage-wise pretty good, so we just might discard this, I guess. But for now, let's use Burner.
So be it.
Draw 2 cards. Good. And let's get rid of Morkrag, I guess. I mean, we don't need the tempo currently, so we couldn't think of just keeping it for now. And just discard your cow. We also have to Bran this card if you want to.
Not get in the way of me,
So that's probably not. Oh, anyway, because like if he has the Alpha deal like 4 damage to someone else, if there's no allies on the row, there's not a good target. Before that it wasn't, so it just maybe gave him 2 cards. Runs down. Well, I think it makes sense. Yeah, there it is. That's exactly what I'm talking about. So basically lost 2 points because of the Blue Mountain Elite. But hey, like point-wise we're still ahead. If I can think of playing Operator into Elder Bear just for the points. I mean, we probably won't draw into Savage Bear with the Bran. It's 1/9 has chance, kinda. So let's play the bear. As I said, point was we're fine. I think we need to utilize Brando. Maybe not anymore quick though. I mean, on the other hand, when we want to contest round 1, we probably want to play more quick. The other option would be Raging Bear, but then we have nothing to play. Let's do a Botano, that's pretty decent. Okay, let's play... Let's get Morphic out here. Maybe draw the Savage Bear, let's see. The more Finn, the better. So... Go Morphic, go! Nope, it's a fair. It's basically a card we can't use. So this gives him a bear, I don't care too much. The more important thing is that we get another bear into the graveyard. That is the... Okay, he passes. Gives us a round again. It's just like... If you like use your discard cards in round 1, you will get so much points here, so enemies often pass. And we have now like the tools we need to contest like other rounds. Like for example, we can now simply play Bearmasters and get them back with Freyas, which is good. Oh, there's a Savage Bear. That's nice. Okay, that's not bad. Like we have like good tools now in the hand. Is there anything better I would like to have? Probably a Guara. And like, I don't need this for discard, but hey. Do we want to... Yeah, we play this I guess, and we use both those. It's fine. How do we start though? Guess with him. I play it into the front row because if he has like the archer, it's just like more damage if there's something on the back row. I just like don't want to give him the points. Or her. Dopperi. Dissen. Question is, can he kill our bears? Because then we may want to like boost it immediately. Let's see. Yeah, I think he...
Dance of death! Ha! Ha!
And not this time we could also play Savage Bear. I don't think he can like distribute like... On the other hand, like... Just using Savage Bear on a 1-point unit is kinda meh. It could be really cool and just play Raging Bear into this to get like 1 more point for the Bearmaster. We have still like 2 targets. You know what? Let's do that. Let's actually do that. And what do we discard though? Actually, we probably want to discard the bear, right? What do we want to discard here? I'm tempted to discard a Freya. Hiko is fine though. So I'm sacrificing the extra point here. Because I may want to discard it. Let's just like make that this survives and then we get some points here. Want to push a bit. Maybe he kills the Bearmaster, so we can't think of like resurrecting him already in this run. Because I see like it buffed plus 10. So currently a Bearmaster is already worth 11 points.
Just great.
There we go, that's target for Savage Bear. Ooh, that hurt. Well, at least now there is like another beast, a bear in my graveyard, and we can kill the Bearmaster with my Raging Bear, and we can just resurrect him again. So let's do that. And let's wait with Bran. I'm still thinking if you want to discard the Savage Bear, because we need something to discard. If I get one of those, it's fine. Those are kinda... Those I would like to have in a Mulligan next round. Now I have a target for Savage Bear as well. What do I discard though? I don't want to decoy this. So I may want to discard decoy. If I discard Savage Bear now, I get one more point on the Bearmaster. And then I have another Bearmaster. But I don't want to decoy. No, I don't want to decoy. That's decision made. There's an elf on the battlefield. Do we sacrifice it? I mean, then he needs to play another elf, but on the other hand, like... Do we kill elves? It's maybe a mistake. I was thinking if we should kill the elf to deny additional synergies. Could also like just Bran and like hope it hits this one. I think we need to Bran now. Get rid of the decoy. We still have like Necromancy. Necromancy? Necromancy, whatever. English, I tell you. Basically we have like 2 more Bearmasters in this round because we can resurrect 1. Next round we have 1 for Necromancy? And 1 for Freya's Blessing. Don't mind my English. So that's fine. Question is what to do with Kambi.
Yovith will guide us.
Okay, I don't care. Let's let it Bearmaster. I think there's nothing wrong with that.
Wojtek, down!
Do we discard decoy or not? Yeah, we do. We do. Yes, we do. We don't want to play combat this round. Shit. We may want to play combat this round. Because that's a good combat. Like, combat into skirmishing. But that says, like, we want to 2-0 this dude. Or this gal. Question is, can we? Or do we just stop playing at some point? Oh, we may want to stop at some point. Look at this. This is like the optimal passing point, actually. Because this way, on the other hand, like, he will just, like, Ragnarok next round again. But if he pass now, how much cards do we get off him? He needs to play 1 card. Let's say he is at 15. Then he gets like 2 points for Ragnarok and needs to play another card, so then we are definitely ahead 1 card. But if he play this out in this round, then he won't dare to play his leader ability, and then we can, like, for Kambi, surprise him. But we can't, because he needs to play at least another card. So we get a Ragnarok for sure, and he will play it as early as possible, I guess. We split rounds here. That's what we do.
He don't like you.
We play another Bearmaster for the value, and now we pass. Because now, like, he has like an even harder time to catch up. He needs to sacrifice even more good cards. Maybe he's tempted to play Francesca into another Ragnarok.
Did I scare you?
Yeah, there we go. We get an engine. Nice. I think this is perfect. Let's pass. I have the tools I need. And he really needs to... He really struggles now to get ahead. Like, he played like so low tempo currently. Like, just playing like 5-point unit basically. And Ragnarok. That's really so suboptimal for him. I think he's... like, it will be really hard for him to catch up here. This is why splitting rounds with Bearmaster is so great. Oh, that's not bad. Still 11, well, okay, 9 points. So I get at least a card of you. Question is, does he need 2? I mean, he gets like the 2 points for 1 point for 2 points from Ragnarok. So he's at 16. Oh, he's playing Francesca. Nice. So we actually got Francesca out of him. So that's good. So he doesn't get a card of him. But what's even better is that we get Francesca out of him. This way we don't need to fear another Ragnarok. And with Kambi we may be able to do some shenanigans. We'll see. That was not bad. Okay, what's left is the Wolf Pack. It's kinda meh. What do we want to draw? We want to draw into Freya, I guess. What do we discard here, actually? Oh, actually, no, we want to discard Skirmisher. Because then we can draw it, and then we can play it into Kambi. Or what discard we then? Ulvedin, probably. So the idea is now that we discard Ulvedin. Oh, don't you dare to play Beast. Okay, he wants to
We
kill.
shall do it my way.
Sure, fix your hand. It's a good idea. And the idea is now that we discard... we could actually discard Wolfpack too. Well, let's discard Wolfpack actually. It's way less... Why wouldn't I discard Wolfpack? So let's discard Wolfpack. Maybe probably just play Ulvedin for that. And then we go for the Bearmasters. Or just play Agara and play the Bearmasters onto Agara. We need to play both anyway. We can play another Garrison. When Ulvedin is not worth a lot currently. But luck is probably more important anyway. So let's play Ulvedin here. Let's discard the Wolfpack. For more Bearmaster power, we'll get this finisher. That is our counter target. Now DK would be interesting, but like, that's gone. Anyway, like we have 2 Bearmasters for Necromancy. Damn this card! Not going to say it again. The Death Spell. So we have 1 Death Spell and 1 Resurrection Spell. So there's luck. He doesn't want to commit anything as well. I think we want to commit like a Bearmaster now, just to get it back onto speed. Let's play Freya. There's a Bearmaster.
Sure, you can
And there we go.
Long as you
Plus
don't mind losing
14,
an arm.
guys. 14. Yeah, meh. You're right, absolutely, Francesca. So he can destroy that for sure with some shenanigans like Scourge, I guess. But we have another one. Another beast. And if he keeps Scourge until the last card, then we're going to discard it with Kambi. Kambi?
Peace with humans?
Today's
and
pronunciation.
by
Day.
that.
Okay, that doesn't really help him. Yeah, I mean, like, we need to play... we can just remove the lock, why wouldn't we? We won't have it distributed over
Be
rows.
gone. Leave us.
So if he kills, like, Ulvedin now, we still have to Aguara.
Yes!
Killed the Bearmaster. Nice. So that was a bit of luck. This would have hurt, but I think we would still have been able to make it. So another Bearmaster.
Get him, Wojtek!
There you go. And now comes the master plan. Okay, that's like probably not going to help him that much, I guess. Except he gets like, well, Igni could work. Oh, there we go. Nice. And again, it's a reveal.
Sit at my table.
I've seen quite a few
let's
with Luke's there
drink.
actually. It's interesting. Typically, you don't see that much, but hey, no Roach in hand. Cool. Well, that's perfect. Aaron, Burner, Awesome. No Bearmasters. I like this hand. Even better. This hand would be even better with like Operator, but hey. we already kind of lucky with this hand, so let's use it. And let's get Roach out immediately. Come Roach, come to me. Let's get rid of the Savage Bear. Let's get rid of the Elder Bear. And I guess of the cow, like no one needs the cow, right? There we go. Roach. And end turn. And next round we're going to play Burna, discard even more, get ahead. No, don't banish. He banished my Bearmaster. What an ass. Okay, that hurts. That hurts. I don't like this.
We shall do it my way.
Okay, Operator, that's cool. Can use Operator and Savage Bear. Oh, I guess we... Do we go for tempo? We can just keep this, I guess. Still have Bran. Let's get rid of one of those and let's go for skirmishing.
Nothing like some overseen plundering in springtime.
We can still think of discarding Warcrack if you need the tempo.
Order will triumph. It must triumph.
Okay, he's boosting this one. I see problems arising. So this is the funny thing, by playing Savage Bear with Operator, we can now use the Savage Bear to just kill his Savage Bear, so it's a 7-point play. The question is, do we keep Markback for next round? I think so. Let's get rid of Wolfsburg. Just need to Finn. There you go. So we are now quite ahead, like playing Markback here as well would have been kind of like an overkill. So let's keep him for tempo next round. Oh, now we just drop beasts, basically. That's the idea. There we go. Yeah, that's the typically basically push him out of the round. He still has 3 of his charges, so we're going to push now, and we want him to like drop all his important cards. Okay, there's Kambi. Let's see, do we want to have something around? I would like to have Bearmaster. That's for sure. What don't we need? We don't need Necromancy right now. And we don't need Deca right now. Okay, well, two resurrects, shit. Now we need just to hope that we get the Bearmaster through the discard. If not, then we may run into problems, because without the Bearmaster, I'm not able to push. And that's a problem. This is a problem. But we need to get more into the graveyard anyway. So like, there's no like we need to play there. There's no way around it. But still, we may want to lock this, but I think there are better cards to lock. We can just kill it. There's 2 more. I mean, he probably will kill it anyway. So let's waste the 1 point. I don't care. We keep Bran here. Because, as I said, like, he probably wants to kill this unit. So.
I shall be your eyes.
Oh, wow. Now I have exactly 3 cards left, so I don't want to use Bran now. Which is a bit of a problem because I would like to play more card. I actually think too much now. Which is a problem. We can just play Warcraft for him now. But there won't be any more discards, which is a problem for this one.
Praise be to the great sun!
The 2-0 him, like, this would not be a problem. So we can now think if we want to go 2-0. So we are 4 points ahead. We have no access to Bearmaster, which is a big problem. If that, we maybe would have told him, but so this way. Nah. Does it make sense to kill this? Because like he has something, he wants to do something with the boosts. What to do with only 3 cards in the deck? That's the question.
Not your lucky day.
Okay. Well, he wasted basically. Now he knows that I'm actually already thin. I don't care too much currently. You can't pass on me. I think we just risk it to O now. We need to. There's like no way around it actually. We're at card disadvantage anyway. Okay, this is good. I can discard the skirmish if you can't. So this way we can also kill the Savage Bear to resurrect it again, because we can play another Raging Bear. So we now need to win this with the Savage Bears.
154.
Yeah, he's going for Mulligan anyway. So we need to Sure. Do your thing. He actually wants me to pass. This would be okay. Let's see if we find a good luck target. So let's kill the... This way we can now replay one more 8-point bear, which is quite okay. And then like those 3 gold kids need to make it for us. We need to...
Hop to it, Blaze!
That hurts. It's not as like dangerous as it could have been, but still. So as I said, this is like an 8-point unit now, which is good. Let's just kill the recruit, I guess. There we go. We're 6 points ahead, it's good. And this will be okay, I guess. And we just need to see what we do with this too. And this has the knight, which is okay. I don't care about this. Don't have a lock target, which is meh. We think something gets bigger. I mean, he tries to not make this unit bigger. I think we want to keep the lock. Let's do it this way. We're 5 points behind, which is... Let's see if the 6 points can make the difference. I think this is like the big, how to say it.
Wise choice.
Anyway. Okay, he catches up. I mean, like, currently it looks fine, actually. Let's now just... Well, actually, we don't want to lock any unit, we don't care. So let's remove the lock, the invisible lock. So this is fine. He actually wins without bears, I guess. Or Bearmasters. Let's see. It depends what he's playing now. Ah, this is good. Like, this is not bad. I mean, he has like, he can play one finisher, but still. Does it matter where we play it? No. Okay, there you go.
Let's not get in the way of me.
And now he needs to make it with 1 card. And this is going to be hard, I guess. Sad. Don't forget to subscribe if you like to see more Homecoming deck guides, and leave me a comment below to tell me which deck to cover next. Thanks for watching, everyone, and see you in game.